Hi, I'm Dave Williams, and I lead the market strategy for Quali. I specialize in DevOps and platform engineering with a specific focus on infrastructure automation. It's great to be with you here today, where I can delve into some of the crucial aspects of how to enhance software development processes to achieve a better efficiency and alignment with the business goals. This comes very much specific around how does the infrastructure and how it's developed contribute directly to a business value outcome. The first thing I'd like to go through is very much developer experience. Developer experience, I think everybody understands. If you're a developer or a team leader or anybody involved in DevOps, developer experience is something that enables organizations to get the maximum amount of effectiveness from teams. Basically, the right tooling, the right skills, the right environments that can help organizations maximize their developers' organization and make sure that the applications being developed are actually in line with what's expected. Unfortunately, today, the business doesn't understand what developer experience really is. Therefore, what happens is that because there's no direct alignment between business outcome or ROI and a specific developer or a specific skill set or a specific technology, teams often struggle when it comes to creating a business case for any additional resources or capabilities or tools. So this presentation aims to explain how one particular aspect of this is being addressed by environments as code, which is an iteration and an augmentation of infrastructure as code. It's the next logical leap into how to make and componentize infrastructure in a way that is more building block focused and less ability to actually go down in. So it's still very much a code oriented practice, but it's a way that enables the code which is developed to be more standardized and effective, even if you're using different IAC files, even if you're using configuration files. And so what it means is that a standardization of all the disparity can be made more effective if it then gets put into something that looks normalized and stabilized. The biggest challenge that most people have today is the fact that there is a big gap in developers. The skills that are required and the amount of people coming into the industry is just not enough to sustain the growth. What happens is that the diversity of skills is really not adding to this. So whether you're using serverless, physical devices, whatever you're using, containers, clouds, you're coding to the edge, the application, it could span many different things. Therefore, the tooling that supports that can be quite diverse. That is something that obviously when you leave university and when people are coming into the industry, not a lot of work is done around how do you build infrastructure with which to build the code, because the infrastructure has become an inherent part or a component of the code building. It's not an abstraction. It's not something else. It's an integral part. And when you make it an integral part, therefore the coding expertise for doing it must be made available. So if you look at today where we have around between 24 and up to 30 million developers, by 2030, you're going to have 45 or plus million developers coming into the industry to support the growing needs of the business in worlds where workloads are becoming ephemeral. AI workloads are becoming almost normal today, where they burst. Configurations change constantly, and infrastructure has to adapt in a way that provides support for the application at any point in its life cycle or any time that's being used, but also to the point where it can be managed. So you don't want infrastructure being a stranger to the coder. They need to understand exactly by it doing things. This is the additional impact I've got to do on configurations. This is the additional cost I'm putting in. Can you imagine that when you've got all these new people coming into the industry, having to learn all this infrastructure stuff, and also understand that the way that the business is looking at infrastructure is becoming much more business oriented. Now, there's things that people care about and not care about, and I think this is very important. Everyone focuses on what they care about. So they start with the developers in the developer experience, get more, I need obviously to do more code quality. I've got to get more tools and technology that enable me to support that code quality. I need autonomy. I need the freedom to make my own decisions. Developers have huge amount of intellectual property and understanding to make things work that the business does not understand. And so therefore, to restrict that in any way would impede the ability for the application to support the expectations. You want to be able to learn. I mean, this is the whole point. If you've got new skills new capabilities, obviously your own IP goes up. So developers are actually having a much better time in actually saying, I'm learning new skills. These are going to be useful for me going forward. And that's why it's important. Same as code efficiency and performance. I want to make sure that I'm optimizing what I'm using and it's efficient and it's seen and it's resembled on me. I am responsible for making that code as good as it is. And of course, you want to make sure the code base health is good. So you want to make sure that there's as fewer bugs as possible, et cetera, going into the code that enables you to basically move on and get to the next level. The business only cares about certain things. It cares about the ROI of anything that is used and paid for or just used. Even if it's open source, it still requires skills, expertise, support, etc. So it has to have an ROI. Everything has to tie to an ROI. Development costs, the time to market. These are all the things that a business would require. So if you go and talk to a business manager about a new tool, they may come back and say, well, what is the productivity gain on having that new tool? What are you doing today that is fundamentally going to change overnight enabled when that tool comes in? And so therefore, it needs to be tied directly to a business case of some description, which is typically done by associating the work with the outcome of the application. And that's where this gap occurs. So developers don't care about certain things. It's not just about what you do care. It's about what you don't care about. And what you don't care about carries more weight into the argument than what you do care about. You can talk about, I need to do this, this, and this. What you don't typically say is, I don't care about this. And typically, developers don't care about the overall corporate business strategy. They don't care about cost constraints too much. Cloud has made everybody think that infrastructure is free and available 24/7. And therefore, the cost constraints that are currently crippling businesses are not really taken into consideration and very hard to enforce when the developer is asked to develop more code, do more application updates, create more prototyping, whatever it happens to be. It all has infrastructure behind it. So therefore, cost is something that could become a major inhibitor if the limitations are there. But again, it's not a high level thing. Marketing and sales dynamics, obviously, is another thing that they do not care about. Operation and maintenance costs. There's an awful lot of new tech and code maintenance going on. Technical debt is rife. From physical all the way through to serverless, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's been done. Containers, lots of virtualization systems. So there's been meshes being built. There are different types of devices, that the network, etc. So the complexity is there. And unfortunately, all the complexity moves forward in a way that sometimes it doesn't mean that you can use a tool today that's going to provide you with a capability tomorrow. So everybody moves tool sets and moves forward, leaving behind them lots of technical debt. That is something that only the business typically has to worry about once it has to pay for it and work out how they can move the technical debt forward to eliminate that cost. So that's what the developer doesn't care about. I mean, these are the sort of things, there are no one's metrics against that. The business, on the other hand, doesn't care about technical debt either, really. It doesn't understand it. It just thinks that everything is very simple and that you can move things forward. That's not because they're naive. It's just purely that the complexities of infrastructure is lost on people that don't live it every day. And the importance of developer tools is also not in, right? It's like, how would you understand the value of an IAC product to the bottom line of a business? It's very difficult to make that link between the two things. And therefore, they don't understand. If you ask for more resources or whatever, they say, if I give you more resources, how much is the ROI on that? And then cutting edge technologies, they really don't get jazzed by the latest whizzy thing. They hear about it constantly. It's always there. Therefore, it's not something that's going to rock their boat unless you can put something that gives them real different perspective on why that technology is going to move the needle and help them to be more efficient and more business outcomes are actually attributed to it. And then feedback from developers. This is something that's criminal. The fact that there's development teams today that don't get asked their own opinions on how things should be done and the prioritization, and there's an awful lot of skills being wasted there. So that's another thing. The business doesn't care about that. It thinks it knows what it wants. It wants an application. All the underlying capabilities are really to the developers, but they may not get a seat at the table. So the impact of this is widespread, but I think that I'll give you 3 examples of the impact. So you can see from the lists here, there's communication gaps, there's stifled innovation happening in regards to the business misalignment. There's forced code mandates occurring with no understanding about the impact that has. And on the other side, on the business side, you've got increased cost delays with no understanding about why. You've got market misalignment because things are being developed as something that is maybe an older type of technology or a previous iteration of something. And there's a lot of competitive edge. Obviously, if the synergies between the development team and the business organization aren't close, then there's going to be some disparity between the expectations of the business and the capabilities of the development organization. And nothing speaks louder than words is in regards to healthcare.gov, for those of you who remember, where the federal government made it a mandate that everybody should get healthcare. And they built this website. The biggest challenge they had was the quality when it came out was terrible. It didn't work, basically. It didn't work for a long, long time. And the main reason for that is that it delayed the project significantly with increased costs because it didn't work. But no one really understood why it didn't work. And the reason why is because the expectations of the requesters had nothing in line with the capabilities of the development organization that they put in place to deliver it. The timelines were too short. There was obviously no real planning that's been put in regards to completed guidelines and deadlines. There was a miscommunication between what the developers developed and what the organization asked for that to be done. They just basically put a line in the sand and said, that's what's going to be done. And that's what came out of it. It's just normal. The same goes for the Knight Capital Group. In 2012, they lost 440 million in 45 minutes. And basically it was because they released technology without the proper testing, and they rushed something to market very quickly. And unfortunately for them, it was a lot to do with their stock system. So it was really something that highlighted the business objectives, cutting corners on the using cutting edge technology, and they just didn't match. So at the end of the day, the risks that were involved were we're releasing code, but we're not quite sure on all the caveats. And the point is that it caused them an outage. There's nothing worse than learning about poor code than through the lens of cost. And then lastly, my Ford is one of my favorites. It's that the developers were told we need to make everything touchscreen and we need to make things easy for the car. And unfortunately, what came out was we did everything we thought we were doing, but no user input, usability studies were put into this. So what people got was something that was unusable. It did everything that the developers asked it to do, but the interface was so awful that no one liked it. And it caused huge amounts of problems and a lot of credibility for Ford. So what I'm saying is that the developer was asked to do something, which they did. But because they weren't involved in the user capabilities and more of the studies that needed to go on how it should be used, then the function spec was fine. The usability was lacking. And that's what caused that. And that's the difference of the impact. So today, there's a market direction that's bringing together lots of these type of capabilities together. One of them is, you might have heard about it, it's platform engineering. Who hasn't heard about platform engineering? People say it's an iteration of DevOps. Platform engineering and DevOps are mutual. One is about continuous delivery of code to the and the continuous updates, continuous delivery into the business. The other one is all around the capabilities that you need to support that. And DevOps has got to a level of maturity where massive amount of fragmentation that has evolved over the last 15 years is being assumed by certain amount of control points through the organization, whether you're using a GitOps approach or whether you are looking at still your Jenkins, your build engines to do some of the work, the automation, etc. There's platform engineering, which basically is an iteration of IDPs where the developer gets everything in front of them. Anything that you need to do should be at an arm's length. You shouldn't have to go to another technology to do it. You should get everything in front of you, much more advanced than an IDE ever was. So really what the environments are doing, these platform approaches are enabling people to do more with everything at hand. So for example, infrastructure is currently a separate process. You go to the IAC, you do your coding. Wouldn't it be cool if you could actually get a lot of that as services within your IDP? And so these are the sort of things that are being developed where the infrastructure platform engineering still uses all the IAC and you've got freedom of choice. You can do these things. It subsumes it into the platform. It standardizes it, makes it look consistent. It then can associate ownership, costs, policies, governance. All these things can be associated when you abstract it, make it into more building blocks, make it consistent because standardization equals scalability. So when you can bring it in, yet still let people do whatever they want, developers can still build the code, but this platform brings it in, makes it more usable for other people to use, and makes it self-service, puts it through your IDPs. It makes it much more of a streamlined process in front of you. It's not a separate thing. And these platforms are actually aimed at simplifying that information. So the skills that I mentioned at the beginning, with a gap, you should be able to get people to be able to use this stuff out of the box without them having to learn lots of infrastructure skills. They should at least get a good head start on, I now know what it looks like. So how it works is very basic. Within the infrastructure platform engineering solution, it subsumes the information discovers what you have. It makes it into building blocks by doing introspection, by normalizing the content. It then creates building blocks from that where you can build environments. And an environment basically is not only just the IAC, which is a component, but also the data, the tools integrations, and any workflows you want to add on top, intelligent workflows on top. So you can do a lot more things. It's a container environment, and it has associated with a business value. So this environment equals this pipeline activity, which supports this application, which enables this business to do much better. And so therefore, the line of association between the bottom line and the top line is actually cemented through the platform. So the developer experience is actually enhanced by using these types of platforms because they're not replacing what's already been done. They're just making what's being done more consumable. They're making it more simplistic. They're making it more scalable. And that's not done overnight. That's done through the fact that it's been a number of years. People have learned how to do these things. The world, fragments and consolidates. We're now at a point where consolidation and control is going to be used because the business needs visibility. And if you can provide the visibility of what's being used and why to the business so they can do real-time cost management. Imagine that, real-time cost management, which you can do with these tools because you're not trying to assemble multiple fragmented tags. So if your cloud is tagged consistently using environments, which is simple abstraction on the IAC, which is part of that, then obviously you're going to get a much more, I'm using these costs, I'm managing to my costs. I have a self-service interface that tells me how much things are. And as it morphs and becomes more of a expansive workload, it tells me how much costs are increasing and gives the business the ability to optimize against business priorities and lets the applications development people we can understand exactly what's going on because what we do is then associated with a priority. Now we can actually see that when optimization is done, the stuff that is really critical doesn't get optimized. The stuff that is less critical can be optimized. So you're not giving everybody a haircut, which is what happens today. So lastly, the developer experience is really something that is very, very important. Make things simpler, easier. I need to use what I want, but I want to make it so I can actually be faster in creating infrastructure as code. I want to be able to purpose other people's work. I want to be able to pass my infrastructure information to the testing team who will then use that with which to associate their own tools, but on a platform that's already been built. And that can go through a whole pipeline and you can associate all the environments that are used through a pipeline in consolidation that shows overall costs, overall value, and reusability. So self-service, reusability, common policies, common governance, lower risk. All that should be done without making the developer do other things that they don't need to do. So this thing should have the back of the developer. If the things aren't policy, I'll make sure that you can get the policy in there easily. Everything should be simple. And that's the whole point of these platforms. So I've gone through this at a very fast point, and I want to make sure that in conclusion, we've explored, how the developer experience is critical, how by making it better helps the development team be more applicable to the business, how the business can now understand what the developers are doing with better clarity. And it also enables the skills gap to be addressed because obviously you're enabling lesser skilled developers to be able to understand and get access to infrastructure. There's going to be more and more developers coming in with less infrastructure skills. So it enables companies to be much more scalable, get their skills optimized better, and it grows the capabilities of the organization generally. So it improves the developer experience, which in turn also helps the business understand how to tie the developer experience with the business outcomes. So I'd like to thank you for attending this presentation. If you have any questions, I would encourage you to either call me directly. I've left my link in the PowerPoint, but I also encourage you to go to quali.com, where you can play with an infrastructure platform engineering solution called Talk. And that has a playground where you don't have to go outside and you can just play with it and work with it how it works. Or you can use the trial and then link it to some of your other production systems and tools to see how it integrates well in a very safe way. So with that said, I'd like to thank you for your time today, and I wish you the best.